You've been brainwashed to believe that working a 9 to 5 slave job is the only way to survive. But what if this is the biggest scam in the world? Today, I'll expose the truth and reveal what's keeping you trapped in this grind. At the age of 18, they gave you a life sentence. Your crime, being alive. Your punishment, erasing your dreams. And your sentence, working a job for the rest of your life. They gave you a degree with which you could become part of the real world. A world full of normies doing as they're told. A world where you could walk the hamster wheel of repetition. A world where you could just sit in a cubicle and be lifeless every single day of the week. A world where you could become a specialist. But you are smart. You look out into the world and you look at all the other species and you realize that the only species that becomes a specialist are insects. And you don't want to be an insect. You know you're meant for more. And you know where this is going. You know that this lifeless, soul-crushing existence is something that you can't take for too long. You know that this world of normies is a world where people get tired at the age of 28 and then stay that way for the rest of their lives. And you are sitting there in traffic in your car on your way to your job and you're wasting 30 minutes sitting in traffic and you realize that everybody else is also wasting 30 minutes sitting in traffic. Everybody in the whole world is wasting 30 minutes sitting in traffic every single day. And they are going towards a job that is meaningless. They are going towards a job that they hate. They are going towards slavery. But you are not like them. You are listening to audiobooks instead of those music listeners in their car. You, in your car, are developing yourself. You, in your car, are expanding your mind. You, in your car, are searching for a way out of this matrix mess. But how did you end up here? As you're sitting there in your Ford in traffic, you're asking this existential question. How did I end up here? And as you're thinking about it, the answer comes to your mind. It's that fucking Ford guy. That Ford guy that made the world believe that band work was totally fine with his silly little quote. If I had asked the people what they wanted, they would have said foster horses, and I gave them soulless, lifeless, stupid little soul-crushing, long-winded jobs instead. That fucking Ford guy. Who the fuck does he think he is? What about all the people that want to go by horse on their horse roads? They don't have horse roads anymore now. All in the name of efficiency, making it all more efficient. Efficient for what? 30 minutes standing still in traffic. That's more efficient than going by horse. It's one big joke. And so you're sitting there and you're blaming these corporations. You're blaming these overlords that have control over anything and are paying you miserable wages for nothing. A job that you hate. And so you're sitting there in traffic and you're thinking where you are going. Going to your job, a job in a building where everybody is dumber than you. You are one of the smartest people in that building. Your boss cannot do a better job than you. Why is he telling you what to do? This all makes no sense. At least you should get a raise. But they are not willing to give you a raise because you are that strange, creative, wacko, smart guy. And it's risky to give a raise to that strange, wacko guy. It's much safer to give a raise to Jessica. Oh my god, look at how beautiful Jessica is. It's always safe to give raises to beautiful people. And you are sitting there. The only reason that your boss is because he has been there longer. And what does being there longer actually means? Being there longer means that he has been sitting in a soul-crushing job because he didn't have the courage to leave and his side hustles didn't took off. In other words, he has been there longer because he failed during his escape plan. And so you are listening to a boss that failed. Not to mention that most of what they are saying is a lie. Oh, it's only 8 hours a day. You still have 16 hours for yourself. Really? 16 hours for yourself? That's absolute bullshit, and you know it's absolute bullshit. First of all, the first 2 hours of your day you have to wake up with excessive amounts of coffee, and so that's not fun. Then you have to drive to your work for 1 hour. Then you have to also sleep 8 hours a day, and when you are back from your job of 8 hours of soul-crushing, mindless bullshit things, there's nothing left of you anymore. When you come back from your job, your mind is destroyed. Your evenings are occupied with thinking about your escape plan. Your evenings are full of making food and doing groceries, so that you can then stay alive and do it all over again the next day. But you are smart. You've been studying history books in the car, and so you know that this is nothing less than slavery. Historical slavery was oftentimes even better. First of all, during the worst period to be alive, the absolute worst period, the Dark Ages, the peasants had 120 days off, 120 days of holidays. That's way more than your 3 weeks. And then second, the slaves. The slaves were working, and they got for that a house and food and then a little bit of money with which they could do other things with. And you get money, but with that money you buy a house and food, and then you have a little bit left to do things with. This is the exact same thing as in the slave times. And when you tell that to your colleagues tell you that you're a wacko, you're a strange guy. Of course we're not slaves. Look at us. Slaves were chained. Slaves were forced to do all sorts of strange labor. I'm not chained. I am free, dudes. And as you're listening to these dumb colleagues of yours, thinking about their freedom, explaining how free they are because they're not chained and they have 3 weeks off, you cannot but think by yourself, these fucking morons, they know nothing about history. Look at them talking, this is insane. First of all, the bosses back in the slave days treated most of their slaves very well because slaves were extremely expensive. They took good care of their expensive goods. Second of all, most slaves didn't run away. They were not chained because they didn't want to run away. Running away means not having a house and not having food, which is way less than having a house and having food. So most slaves didn't run away. Just like most employees now, they don't run away. They are just doing their job 5 days a week, and that's it. And as you're sitting there in your Ford funnel, you cannot but see these people that have figured a way out, that have figured a way out of the matrix. You see these artists that are just taping a banana to a wall and selling it for $120,000. You see these artists that are sitting in a chair, looking in the eyes of the participants and are making billions of dollars doing that. You see these YouTubers that are simply pressing record, saying whatever they want and become millionaires doing that. And you cannot but envision a better future for yourself. You cannot but see that you are meant to do something like that. That you are meant to pave your own way. And there is a solution for you. There's a solution provided by someone who was walking by foot to his job and was looking at these horse-drawn carriages and thinking by himself, oh my god, I also want to sit in a horse-drawn carriage, reading a book, expanding my mind, and being driven to whatever location, perhaps my job, perhaps not my job. The solution is provided by one of the greatest minds of the 19th century. Someone that understood that everything was a lie. The jobs were a lie. The money was a lie. The universities were lies, and everything in between was a lie. Someone just like you. Oscar Wilde. In The Decay of Lying, Oscar Wilde makes an observation that changed the course of my life. He makes an observation that explains the birth of the Matrix, how the Matrix is created. And once you understand how the Matrix is created, you will gain the ability to create it for yourself, to completely change your own reality, a key provided by one of the greatest authors who ever lived. Oscar Wilde makes an observation about Shakespeare that other people don't notice. In the 15th century and all centuries before the 15th century, there is no such thing as pessimism. Nobody is thinking about pessimism. Nobody is writing about pessimism. Pessimism is not a thing. And then Shakespeare comes along, and Shakespeare puts a puppet on a play, and everybody loves the puppet on the play. And the puppet on the play is slightly pessimistic. And so people start to imitate these pessimistic traits, and then philosophers come along and they start to elaborate on this idea of pessimism. And lo and behold, in the 21st century we have people that are identifying themselves as pessimists. They are imitating what Shakespeare has created. But here's the thing. Shakespeare didn't predict pessimism. Shakespeare made it all up. He made it all up. He made up the play. He created pessimism. In 1774, Goethe writes a book, Das Leiden des jungen Werther. And in that book, there is a main character that falls in love with a girl, and the girl doesn't want to have anything to do with him. And he suffers so deeply that eventually he commits suicide. And what happens in the years afterwards, the book becomes a best-selling book. Everybody loves the book, and the men that feel related to the main character, they start to massively commit suicide. Now Goethe didn't predict the suicides. He made it all up. The whole book was made up. And this reality then came into existence. One of the greatest books ever written, one of my favorite books by George Orwell, 1984. In this book he describes a dystopian future where everything is controlled by the party. The party controls what you think. There are thought crimes. People are put in jail for thought crimes. The history is constantly being rewritten and overwritten so that history is controlled and the future is controlled and the media is controlled. Everything is fake news in this dystopian world. And there are a lot of parallels with the 21st century. In the 21st century in the UK, if you dead name somebody on Twitter, you will go to prison. The President of the United States is cancelled from Twitter because he's not obeying the guidelines of the party. And a lot of people believe that George Orwell predicted the future because he's a visionary. But this is not what Oscar Wilde is trying to tell us. What Oscar Wilde is trying to tell us is that George Orwell created the future. The future slowly unfolded itself because George Orwell wrote that book, and the people that read that book and were thinking by themselves, hey, wait a minute, I love this future. They started creating that future, and the people that were afraid of this future also started creating this future. We all know this guy that was afraid that he was going to lose the girl, and because he was afraid, he was constantly doing things that eventually created losing the girl. And so fear is a driver just as well as desire is a driver. The power of these books is that they transform reality. They create a completely new reality, like magic spells, chaos magicians that put out a spell in the world that then transforms the world. One of the most beautiful examples. This is actually perhaps my favorite example. I'm super fascinated by this. This is a spell created in the 21st century where a particular group of people convinced 1 billion people to stop eating carrots, to stop eating meat and start eating chemicals instead. And then they convinced the world to become extremely obese so that we have whales walking on the planet. Big ass whales that have to take a break every single 3 minutes because they can't actually walk. These spells are created by, of course, companies like McDonald's. They've created this future. They didn't predict obesity. They didn't predict that people would just eat chemicals instead of real food. No, they created this future. What Oscar Wilde is trying to tell us is that everything in the world is made up by entrepreneurs, creatives, and marketers. Everything in the world is made up. All of the philosophies are made up. All of the belief systems are made up. All of the personality traits are made up. All of the jobs are made up. All of the degrees are, everything is made up. And if everything is made up, it means that you can make things up yourself. You can make up your own future and then live that future. That is what Oscar Wilde is trying to tell us. Now, all of this is very philosophical in nature, and there's no practical thing that you can actually start doing to make up whatever reality that you want to make up. And there is a problem with people who try to make up their own reality. They try to start a business, they try to write a book, they try to make art and then sell art, but nobody buys the art. Nobody buys the stuff that they have in their businesses. And the reason, of course, is that it's very hard to actually convince massive amounts of people, and that is what you need to do. The other people need to be in your reality. They need to believe your reality and support you in your reality. And so how are you going to do that? Oscar Wilde did it by practicing for 15 years, 20 years, 25 years to become that good so that he could write that book, so that he could invent that reality out of nothing. But there is another way. How is McDonald's doing it? McDonald's didn't practice for 25 years. And so here's what I suggest you do. This is the easier version than 25 years slaving away to become an amazing writer. Make sure that whatever reality that you want to make up for yourself, whatever business that you want to make up, whatever story you want to make up, whatever life that you want to live, solves a problem for the people. If people have a pain point, if people are in pain, they are in need of something, and your made up reality solves their problem, solves their pain points, they will be very happy to live that reality that you made up and to pay you for doing that. And so this is the key to the whole thing. Identify a problem in the real world and then make sure that your creative mind solves that problem, creates that reality for yourself that solves that problem. Now, in order to make up this reality for yourself, you will need some existential courage. You will need some yes-saying skills. You will need to trust the process. And I've made a video that will help you do that. It's called Creative Genius. This is the video you left yourself in your lost life. Link in the description and in the end screen. That's it. Get the hell out of here.